David, Wheldon, Phil Smith, and is Sarah here, by the way? And, sorry, I thought you were. Sarah Mansfield, to act as a bit of a jury, really, to talk amongst themselves without any involvement from us about what they've heard here today, what they think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what we should be doing next, or where they feel that we should be pressing further. So could I invite David and Phil and Sarah to please join us, and we'll leave you to have that conversation.
Right, well, apart from wanting to sue you for the bad back pain I've now got, I've been here all day, and first thing to say is thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been doing a work stream, who's given their time to do it, because it's a monumental effort and there's an awful lot to learn as always, so wanted to get that one in first. And I'm left with a couple of odd feelings, but Phil and Sarah, I can ask you a question in a minute, but I want to get this off my chest. I mean, I thought a brilliant start to the day in every sense, especially when Karen was talking about human creativity and the importance of creativity done by humans. And the word human has popped up in lots of sessions. And perhaps the place it really needs to pop up a bit more is in the technology space, where technology is supposed to be in service of human beings, not the other way around. You know, what's happening with the impact of social is it's the doom scrolling thing. We all know we're all being sucked into a place we shouldn't be, and we're all being exploited. So I think there's a lot to talk about around technology, but a lot to celebrate as well. But Sarah, have you been here all day?
Unfortunately not, no.
Oh. Well, yeah.
I've been here all afternoon.
All afternoon.
Yeah, I joined about mid-afternoon, but I got some very good briefing notes from Nick, so
Yeah.
I know the gist of what's been.
I have the notes too. Do you want to go? Me, all right.
Yeah, Phil.
So I've been here this afternoon. I'm really sorry I missed the piece on business models this morning. And reading the pre-read had some reflections around that. Because as I look around the ISBA members that sit around our council and executive committee table, I can see some of those who actually have taken strides to take control, who've either taken on in-housing to a greater or lesser extent, who've built transparency into their operating models, some of whom are enjoying longer-term, more stable relationships with their agencies as a result. And I think the only thing I'd observe around that is that doesn't come without a cost, and it's a scale game. The investment in in-house expertise in order to be able to manage and control that, even if you're dealing with a third party, is significant, and it's been very much the top end of my members, probably a handful or so, that have taken that on and stayed with it. And this is not a new thing. I mean, we've been talking about these business models since I've been in the ISBA job and before, I'm sure. And some of the efforts to take control go back a long way too. So I'm thinking about people who've been working on this for 8-9 years. And what's interesting is that it hasn't really taken root and taken hold and flourished and hasn't really spread. And it's a very, it's not a movement yet. So, one of my questions around what comes out of today, and again, thank you for all of the thoughts gone into it, is how does it come together into things that marketeers not just can do, but will do, because they're not swimming against the tide, they're not putting their heads above the parapet, they're not exposing themselves to risk of career failure as opposed to doing the safe thing.
Sarah?
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, this is hybrid models you're talking about here, is it, in terms of business models? So in-housing, out-housing, is it, Phil? Sorry, if I understand correctly.
Thinking particularly around media, we've got some who've taken in various amounts of in-housing. Some have gone the whole hog.
Yeah. So most of those, where that happens, most of them is an agency behind it.
Most, but not all.
Sorry?
Most, but not all. But in some cases,
no, but I mean, that's not, detaching completely from an agency. I mean, it's a different model, and I think, a lot of clients want more flexibility in terms of the models that agencies adopt, and hybrid working in whatever form, be that specialists sitting in house and doing the keyboards on behalf of a client, or just spending a couple of days a week in their offices to have more, to be sort of there and have more empathy in terms of kind of understanding their business better. I think it's I am seeing agencies being more open to that, but I think agencies leaning into that more and being more proactive around it. It quite often is, it's the client always saying, this is what we would like. And actually that proactivity, and it's, a word I come back to time and time again, I think at the agencies is lacking. And actually I think thinking ahead a lot more, and actually thinking, okay, all right, having better empathy with clients and saying, okay, what is it a client wants? Well, how can we service them better? What can we do better? Is that a more hybrid model? Is that something different? Whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, I was reflecting because bizarrely, I could take a huge tangent. I've been doing a full-time job again this year on behalf of Allwyn to help them build a global brand platform. The agency I've worked with has been VCCP, and Hearts and Science have done the media, and in both cases brilliantly. So I see no problem inside those agencies, and in the case of VCCP, it's probably because they're independent. I mean, I know they're private equity backed, but this independence, I think, brings a freedom to operate that you don't see in the, what's the word I'm looking for? No, I don't want to swear. The mess of the holding companies who are really struggling, really treating people badly, really dispatching people in pursuit of cost savings and really not generating any value at all. So, the business model, I have to say it now, the business model is fucked. The business model we were looking at this morning, I think, is immaculate. I don't know what you do with that and where you take it and who's going to apply it, because some very odd words popped into my head when I was watching it, thinking what we need is a coalition of the willing. And I mean some willing clients, and I think, Phil, you recognise that in his, but I recognise it through the WFA, who would go, okay, well, let's have a look at this. How can we, in our mutual interest, build a better business model where value is created on both sides of the equation and it's value for everybody, and the people that really benefit are the consumers and the customers at the end because they get proper value out of it. So I think it's a bit more than just in-housing, out-housing, but they're...
Yeah, I think it's hard to persuade a business to do that on faith.
Yeah.
In all of this activity, people are looking for demonstrable business benefits. They're not interested in creativity per se. They're interested in ads that sell, and that relationship with the CFO is absolutely a
oh god, yeah,
one.
yeah, definitely. I mean,
sure.
everything that came up in that previous piece of research, I was like, yes. Clients needing to become more outcome focused. And I know agencies are starting to think more outcome focused in terms of business models. It is challenging. It's challenging, I think, for advertisers as it is for agencies, because what are those outcomes? And quite often, you work with a load of proxies actually rather than sort of deterministic sort of KPIs. So what that looks like and moving, to the right model that works for both the agency and the client, I think is for quite, is a difficult space, and one that's not been, I don't know anybody who's actually sort of, there's very few lighthouse, examples of people who've done that successfully.
I mean, I think if Mike Smallwood is still here, he and I were fondly remembering our Low Howard Spink days when we did a thing called the Value Project, and that would have been in the early 90s, bearing in mind that we were on it was full service agency, full commission, and we were still worrying about value, because what we worried about is, are these ideas that we're giving our clients being fairly rewarded? And the answer to that has always been no. And that's the biggest problem the industry's got, is we've never managed to actually price correctly creativity in its deep sense and what it does for a business. I tried when I first became a client at the Coca-Cola company to say that agencies should have what we were having internally, which was a focus on the stock price, and therefore they should have stock options. And we went quite a long way down the line of making that happen until it was stopped because of the complexity of it. But some way of fairly sharing the value creation it needs to be found, and I think that's a struggle, but I don't think you should give up the struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard it said that if you go back to the world of flat commission and creative and media in the same shop, there was a kind of rough justice that meant that if your idea was good, the client would spend more money on it, and you would earn the benefit of that creative over a long period of time, and be able to, you know, hold with a campaign and a piece of creative for longer. But ever since that dislocation really started happening and gathered momentum in the 90s, that's become more difficult, and I think that's true. But I mean, I do think, though, that there is something that the industry needs to kind of grapple with quite a bit, and shouldn't get too rose-tinted about the past either. So there's a quote that I really, really love, and looking around the room, I can see enough white hairs for people who might know who I'm talking about. So Simon Broadbent, who I had the real benefit of working with in the 90s, had a quote that, you know, advertising is, much to the chagrin of many advertisers, rather a weak force. And I've always felt that, particularly as I've moved from packaged goods environments to other industries like retail and discounting, for example, where you have to take the other, you know, P's into consideration probably before you get to the promotion. And then you couple that with, you know, System One quote. I don't know whether it was surfaced this morning, but it was in the papers that I saw. You know, 6% of ads are ineffective. Last time I looked at the System One database, it was only about 11% that were making the top 2 boxes. There's a lot of the output of the industry that isn't cutting through and cutting the mustard, and that would undermine any conversation with any CFO. And I think is one of the things that's made it much more attractive for some to go for the average and to go for a 50% solution if they're going to get that in a dependable way and give you some kind of metrics, even if they're slightly phony, to take to a CFO.
I think, you know, agencies need to lead that charge. You know, if you think clients are sitting there and have got 10 hours in a day to think about how they re-engineer their agency model, then they don't, you know. It's just they have too many internal things to worry about. You know, that's an agency to solve for, and it needs to be done in a trustworthy and transparent way. I think one of the challenges of moving to outcome-based models is that when you're charging an agency with delivering outcomes is, okay, all right, well, what parameters are being set to deliver those outcomes? Now, for some clients, I don't care, you know, it's like, I just want the outcomes. I don't mind how my agency delivers on those. For a good percentage of clients, they do, and it's how you balance those two things.
Yeah. Well, and again, I enjoyed the whole session around measurement this morning, the 3 separate, inside the work stream, the 3 ways of looking at it. And indeed, one of those was, again, about the human connectivity of tissue and how that works, because what you're trying to do is drive a change in behavior. And I think the metrics that you choose for success are the things you really need to focus on. And actually, behind every bad ad and the 94% that don't work are clients that have approved them all, clients that have said they were great at some point, and clients that have championed it. Where are they when this problem is put in front of people? They're not usually holding themselves to account.
Moving on every 2 years these days.
Yeah, and that's,
you know, one of the industry challenges.
Yeah, but I think, you know, what we're talking about here is we're all in this room because we care about advertising. I mean, I did find myself wondering whether clients really care.
They do.
Yeah, they.
I think that's very unjust. Yeah.
I think clients care, but they really struggle to demonstrate the effectiveness of their work. One thing that I'd thoroughly recommend to everybody in the room is to read the book that has just been published by Alex Schultz, who's the CMO of Meta. It will be complete anathema to most of you because it's a direct marketer's handbook. It is direct mail, direct marketing on steroids. And it focuses so hard on goals, incrementality, measurement, A/B testing, all of the things that we've known. And frankly, when we were brand marketeers, we rather despised amongst the direct mail counterparts because of their poor creative, but actually secretly envied because of their accountability. And it's a new way of thinking about marketing that I think we are seeing more and more of within our membership, certainly. And it's really hard to apply that to what we traditionally think of as brand marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I am a real fan of building brands. So I think, you know, and these days we talk about a brand platform, which I think is a more important thing to talk about than a creative idea, because a creative idea minimizes what a brand platform is. A brand platform enables you to connect with your customers across all sorts of channels in all sorts of ways, and the best brand platforms are the ones that correctly get rewarded, and they're being generated really effectively today. Now, I don't know whether that is, is that an outcome that you measure?
Yeah, it should be. But I mean, a lot of clients are really struggling with the long and the short at the moment, which I'm sure everybody in this room kind of, sort of has heard. So, and the need to drive more short-term sales, so, and balancing that with how do I do that and still invest what I need to do to grow brands. But, every advertiser that's, definitely Unilever or, my previous employer, or other advertisers I speak to and people, everybody realise it's a continuing challenge, it's an increasing challenge that agencies can lean into in terms of how do you do both on what is a budget that is not getting any bigger. It's, and when you've still got significant inflation, the actual amount of money you've got to be able to invest, be that in great creative or in media, is a reducing amount with quite often bigger targets and bigger challenges to deliver against.
One of the good questions too is, where are the levers of brand these days? Is a banking app doing more for that bank's reputation than its advertising?
Well, in the case of Lloyd's, I would say yes.
So would I.
They've done a fantastic job.
And then you haven't mentioned, should we go on to AI in the last 4 minutes?
Right, yeah. I mean, before we do, because
But no, it's got a relation to brands.
Yeah, but
the only reason why I'm saying that is because I think, advertisers are going to need to invest more in brand because they're just going to be disintermediated through LLMs.
Yeah.
So, it's a bigger challenge that agencies can help and assist and, have empathy with advertisers in terms of how they solve and, square that box.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch quickly on some research the WFA did before Cannes amongst CMOs around the world, where they were looking at the biggest risks. And we do need to put the conversation here we're having in context. Risk number one, for the first time ever, the fear of the geopolitical environment and the impact on economy. So it's very difficult to think long term when you've got a lunatic putting tariffs up every 10 seconds and changing things, because how do you plan for that? So we are in an economic backdrop which is difficult. I also was reminded by a presentation I saw the other day. If you look at the IPA Effectiveness Awards last year, 4 of the 5 major winners were family-owned businesses. Why? Because they don't have to worry in the same way about stock market pressure. They think long-term, short-term, and if you look at their case studies, they are exemplars of the long and the short of it. No surprise, given the architect of some of them. But I remain optimistic for the industry, but I sit here thinking, so what do you do next? I mean, Nick and Brian started a phenomenal movement here, and we're all here because we would like to help. Not quite sure how is how I'm feeling about this, but I'm sure we can talk about that a bit more.
Yeah. I'm not sure the charter's the way forward. Sorry, what did you call it?
The Accord.
The Accord, yeah. It felt like a little bit like the prenup before a marriage.
It felt like
it
felt like a prenup before a charter.
Yeah. I was thinking it's
hard.
It is, but it's about having open and honest conversations with the client and setting out those rules, not rules of engagement, but just kind of it goes back to proactivity again.
Yeah.
It's like,
but I think there's a big thing in the relationships. A lot of the analysis resonated, but it does come down in the end very often to alignment of incentives. They say trust is based on 2 things. It's based on your belief in the capability of the person to help you, and it's based on your belief in the will of the person to help you. So you've got to be able to look them in the eyes and know they're on your side. And I think that's one of the things that's broken down a lot in many of the relationships.
Yeah. Sorry, just to say, I mean, in Unilever, and I think it's pretty much the same probably in most most advertisers these days. You have more marketing resource within your agencies than you have in your company. So actually, advertisers need to and want to actually see them as part of the family, as it were, and delivering the same way and having the same, and having the same goals and actually, delivering to the same outcomes, because, it's a big investment of money in terms of resource, and I say a bigger investment quite often than what actually they have in-house. So actually, how do so clients spends a lot of time thinking about how do I leverage, how do I use that resource, how do I get most out of it, but also what's the return for it, because it is a big investment for them. It's kind of big quandary.
It is, but I mean, if you look at what's happening at Diageo at the moment, 2 years ago we would have been talking about Diageo as an exemplar of brand building, using metrics to demonstrate success and then reinvesting in success to great impact. And what we've got now is a new interim CEO who's saying we spent too much money on marketing and we got to stop doing it. And you go, wow, you're gonna destroy the brands that have made you famous. So anybody from Diageo here? I mean, I feel for anybody who's working in a company that was really making great waves in the world of marketing and the way things should be done properly, because right now, change of leadership, everything is blown up, and that goes back to the state of the economy, not the state of marketing or indeed advertising.
Yeah, and when you look at that same WFA survey you were talking about, underneath that concern about geopolitics and concern about economic uncertainty, what you are seeing is massive amount of scrutiny on CMOs for every piece of activity, not just for its financial return, but also for its risk profile as well. Yeah. Whether it's a risk of a brand misstep or whether it's a risk of walking into a political crossfire, particularly in some geographies.
But I do think what you also see in the same survey is, I think, risk number 4 is the policies of the social media companies, the tech companies, and what they're doing, and the lack of regulation to control what they're doing. So, where is the regulator to help fix some of this? Because some of this needs fixing by regulation. And Mark Howe's still here. I mean, I like what Mark said this morning, but one of the problems I have with all of the social media companies is they don't sit in seats like this and answer the questions directly. They obfuscate, they avoid, and the reason they do that is because it doesn't suit their business model to be transparent. And yet, yeah, I agree. I 100% agree, Mark. And maybe we don't do enough of that. I mean, we've done that, with the WFA. I did a podcast with Nicola, and they've come on in leaps and bounds to where they were in 2017, no doubt about that. But, I think we've got to keep pushing all of the platforms to behave better, and that will help solve this problem.
Well, I think any company will operate within the bounds that it's allowed to operate within.
Yeah.
That applies to advertisers as much as it does to companies on the supply side. So I think one of the issues I have is when people push the responsibility back on advertisers for where they spend their money. I'm going, don't expect any individual advertiser to swim against the stream and invest or not invest when their competitors are investing in something that is working. But it is very much, I agree, down to government and regulation to be setting the rules of the road, how much advertising we see, where we see it, in what conditions, in what environments. And that's something that, ISBA has kind of been saying since 2018, that actually government has a role here and it needs to play that role.
Yeah, and
it's long enough to get the Online Safety Act.
Yeah, and I think that will need pushing, but it's great to see the IPA so actively championing creativity again. We haven't had that for a while. Great to see the AA working with ISBA and the IPA. And I think if more of that can happen, and a lot of the work we've seen today gets fed into the bodies, I think we can begin to see some real success with advertising. Who cares, turning into some viable action out of it. So let's see. But
yeah, very much look forward to seeing the action.
Yeah, all right. I think that looks like our time is up. I like the flashing colours.
Yeah,
got green, purple. It's gone purple now. So we've got to shut up.
While we've got Sarah and Phil and David, would anybody like to ask a question? We've got is that Bob over there? And we've got something like so. Should we start with Bob and then go to Alessandro?
Sorry, keep your hands up again. Thank you.
Hi, Bob Wootton. Don't worry, I'm not going to cause any trouble.
Really?
I do have a question for you pertaining to what you've just said. If Who Cares collectively wants to take something forward, as you suggest, David, if you can't quite fathom what it is, would it be best to do that by taking the various bulls that have been fashioned today and will continue to be fashioned forwards and throwing them through AA, IPA, ISBA and others? Or would it be better for Who Cares to actually bundle as a much more powerful, effective thing and then lobby through a single nose cone. In other words, should I throw one big ball at you, or should I throw you 7 balls and expect you to catch them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one big ball is always the way to go with that, because that's the power of ideas, and it doesn't feel like we've got to the one big ball thing yet, you know, how to tighten it to throw one.
Yeah, I think I'd build on that just to say what I can see within the AA and within ISBA at least is, you know, their priorities, their agenda is very much a reflection of the way in which their individual stakeholder membership is steering them, and to try to lob in something to get onto their list, unless it aligns already with something they're trying to do, would probably be hard. Although, you know, who knows, there may be some areas where we find ourselves on parallel paths.
Alessandro. And we've got one more. Oh, hang on. Two more. Oh, hello. Sorry, you have to wait, Alessandra.
Oh, sorry, I've got the mic. Hi, it's Lindsay Clay from ThinkBox. I'm interested in pushing that idea a bit about, do advertisers care? I think it's worth pursuing a bit, because there does seem to be lots of evidence that they don't seem to care in the actions that we see. And Phil, I do completely get your point about, well, you can't expect any individual advertiser. They just don't have the power with the platforms. So I get that. But they can't then act together, because it counts as sort of collective action. And, you know, we saw what happened in the States. But what they don't seem to care about is their individual campaigns. And I don't know if anybody heard the guy from the Molly Rose Foundation on the Today programme this morning talking about you know, the appalling amount of, you know, suicide content, for example, for young teenagers. And if advertisers, through their agencies, pushed much harder on the, you know, well, exactly where are my ads being shown in these platforms? There is some leverage there. And I don't know, you know, my understanding from agencies is there's very little of that, of people that are even interested in that idea, because then, you know, they're not being shown it on a TV screen or a 48-sheet poster. So
well, I'm going to take that on, because advertisers do care about that hugely. You know, ISBA has been on brand safety since Brands Funding Terror in 2017, and then the suicide of Molly in 2018. We were front and center there. We were pushing for transparency reports before they existed. We now have those transparency reports. And when GARM came along in 2019, we were on the steering group from the start, where not only were we working to standards agreed across the industry for a brand safety floor for where advertising should appear, but also brand suitability as well. And as people may, and had some success in getting more out of some platforms when it came to placement controls. And as people may know, that ended up being a legal case from Elon Musk against a whole bunch of advertisers.
I take real offence to that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, yes, advertisers have a responsibility, and so do agencies. And what I infer from that, maybe just how you've put it, Lindsay, but is that, you know, all the responsibility and all the fault is with the advertiser. Agencies are the people who plan and buy the media on behalf of advertisers. Advertisers pay agencies to invest their money wisely for them. So, you know, agencies have to step up, and they have to take their fair share of responsibility for it as well.
Right. Gosh, there's quite a few here. But Alessandro was almost the first, but he's been a bit microphone-less. And then Jake, we've got a few here, so we're going to keep going until we die or fall asleep or whatever.
I absolutely agree on the need of human connections. And this is one thought. And after today and listening to all the different work streams, and also during these last 8 months of conversations and meetings, I felt so many elements are interconnected. All the work streams are connected. It's such a dense web of relationships that need to be triggered, and opportunities and challenges that only collectively we can solve. But if I think of one big issue that I see in the industry is that misalignment of incentives and objectives. And we talk about people who care. I think individually in the industry, a lot of people care. When they are inside the organizations, it's a different story. So it's more of a thought. It's, can this alignment only start coming from the C-suites of across the industry? Because otherwise it's such a dense web of connections that I don't see individuals in mid-junior roles being able to sort out.
Yeah, that's probably true. Sorry, I'm going to take another. Mark, is that Mark? Yes.
Oh, sorry. Too many hands.
Thank you. And Nick, I guess my reflection on the day, and I have been here all day as well, is actually, and actually paid for my ticket myself, because I am a retired man, as you know, which is, that's very expensive for an old retired man. But actually, my reflection is that it's been some fantastic work today, some fantastic ideas and some fantastic thoughts and debates. But for me, a little bit rearview mirror in places, perhaps a little old school in places. And actually, as I said first thing this morning, I think a little bit hostile towards platforms. And I find it a little sad that I retired from Google 2.5 years ago, and I'm the only one that's sort of defending platforms or even speaking about them. And I've got no skin in any game, of course, apart from I sit on the ASA board and, and ban a few ads. So I guess my counsel is carry on with this great work, but really try and actively invite the platforms, as David has done with the WFA, as Phil's done with ISBA, to invite the platforms, invite the right people from the platforms to join your community, those who are active in it, not old has-beens like me, and actually then have that rounded debate, because there are some very decent people working in those platforms who do care, and yet there are a lot of number crunching consultants.
Mark, we don't doubt that. It's I think the corporations are what we're talking about here, not the individuals.
If I was still working at Google, I would be sitting there if necessary, if asked. So these people are allowed to join these communities.
But Mark, we have 700 people who've joined of their own volition. There are some people from Google who are members who have supported us. Fantastic. When we set up the work streams, we invited everybody amongst those 700 members to volunteer to join the work streams. I can tell you that nobody from Google or Meta offered to do so. We can't make people do things. It is. We just can't make people, unfortunately, volunteer. We're asking an awful lot of people's time and effort and trouble to come and do these things and to help us. And if they won't, or if they decide they're not going to do it, then they're not going to do it. And incidentally, they could easily have bought a ticket, because they're probably a bit wealthier than you and me.
Jake, we must hear from Jake at this point, I think.
So for full transparency, we're working with the Molly Rose Foundation extremely closely at the moment, and many other civil society groups. And I would say to Mark that platforms are pretty much in every single conference and on every single stage, and they often, because they pay to play. I think that over the past 12 months or so, there has been a rollback of content moderation across all of the tech platforms. And honestly, the stuff that we see at the Conscious Advertising Network that we don't publish, we don't go and embarrass brands and put stuff in the press, but the increasing amount of legal but harmful content that we are seeing with brands all over it across a number of different tech platforms that ranges from suicide and self-harm with very big brands next to it on certain platforms, that goes to vigilante violence, literal crimes against migrants and people of colour on the streets of Britain that are monetized.
Well, just to say, that would be illegal content.
Yeah,
under the Online Safety Act.
Exactly, and we're reporting it through there.
So you should be reporting that to Ofcom.
Which we are. But I'm just saying that because of the rollbacks, we're seeing a lot worse than we've seen extreme weather disinformation. So a lot of governments, UN folks are getting very, very concerned about the $1 trillion industry monetizing legal but harmful content because of some of the rollbacks that are happening.
Right, thank you. So we go to Dino now, please.
Thank you. In this conference, we've been talking a lot about the share that the platforms have been getting and growing, and the share of new money. So a lot of this is about monopoly and what happens when companies get into a monopoly situation. And I don't think the platforms have had a kick in here. I think it's we're talking about they are effective, but it's the degree in which they are effective. When Google launched their products, they use other media, and that's why they use other media. A lot of clients are drinking the Kool-Aid and over-investing in these channels, and they're having side effects in terms of what these channels are doing because they lack transparency. There's two words, it's monopoly and transparency. There's a pretense of transparency. There's a lot of numbers, but as we've talked about before, there's a lot of bot traffic. We've got no idea about share of voice anymore in the digital world. That's because they're walled gardens that are protecting the data. As media planners and about effectiveness, when we're trying to work out effectiveness, we all know that share of voice, share of market is one of the essential things that you need to work out effectiveness. If your client's sitting there saying data, transparency, why aren't you demanding that these walled gardens share all the data?
We are. So if you haven't talked about it today, you should have been talking about Origin, which is the work we've been doing for the last 5+ years, well, actually more than that, 7 or 8 years, to create accountable JIC standard measurement for digital platforms based on people-based panel measurement combined with first-party data. It's audited.
But it's not happening. So
it is happening. It's live at the moment. If you were a member of ISBA and you were paying your fractional advertiser contribution, you could be looking at YouTube, Meta, and linear TV data all through one lens.
Advertising data of advertising.
Advertiser data.
Advertiser data.
Advertising campaign data.
Competitor data.
Yeah, and not only
Share.
would you be looking at impressions, but you'd be able to look at completed views, you'd be able to look at MRC 2 seconds, you'd be able to look at completion by quartile, and we're planning on bringing in other durations and other services as we speak. So that is happening. That is accountable measurement to JIC standards with audits, some of which we're halfway through, and that's been about holding the platforms to account. It's not been the easiest and shortest of processes, but they have been willing partners in coming to the party at the behest of advertisers. So yeah, it's happening. I mean, it's not all there yet.
But what percentage of the total advertising revenue that these platforms
70%
get?
by the end of the year, because we've got Amazon and TikTok coming on as well. So if that's
no, but of their total revenue, how much is your tracking representing?
We're not tracking search, but we will, by the end of the year, be tracking some 70% of display spend in the UK.
In the social networks?
No, in the total market.
I'm going to draw a veil over this because I can see people putting on their coats.
Yeah, and running. Yeah.
So there's only one thing.
Somebody hold my coat,
There's only one thing left to say, just for 2 minutes, really. And sorry, Jeff, but this time, September last year, after we did our half-day conference, we had to regroup and figure out where we go next. We're in exactly the same position now. We hear what you say. We don't have a plan beyond here. We're going to post all of our materials on our website. Everybody has access to that. And then we will think about where we go next. But where we do need to go next is we need to find a way of being more influential. And we haven't yet had a thought about how we might do that. But I think talking more to the trade associations is essential if we want to be influential. So we will be coming and talking to you in due course. Would you like to finish up with some thank yous?
Oh, yes, I'm hunting this. All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys, for one thing. So thank you to Sarah and to David and to Phil. I mean, when we sort of set off on this journey, whenever it was, 8 or so months, 9 or so months ago, after we worked out what to do after the event in September, I said at the very beginning that we had no clue really what was going to happen, or how many people were going to turn up, or how many people were going to be interested, and how many people would offer to help. But it's been really quite humbling that so many people have first of all shown up here, but also have spent time away from their day jobs helping on the work streams and delivering some really great content, as you've seen today. But there are obviously people we need to thank, and not only that we need to thank, but I think you need to thank too. There's not only Karen Stacey we mentioned this morning, but Emma Willis and the whole DCM team have been fantastic throughout. I mean, you know, apart from giving us a venue, which is astonishing, they've done almost all of the organisation. I mean, I was telling a story to somebody at lunch that years ago I account directed an ad that fortunately won a whole lot of awards. I was a media bloke, but I sort of did this as an aside. And I said at the end of doing that, I would never, ever be rude about account people ever again, because the job they do is phenomenal. And when it comes to trying to organise an event like this, I mean, God, I'm in awe of the work that Marg and Emma and all these people do, because it's just phenomenal. It just seems to sort of work, you know. We just sort of turn up and stand here and give presentations, but they've done so much work, and thank you so much for everything that you've done. Also, we should thank Laura Bertrand, who from View. Laura's responsible for all the View, the events at all the View cinemas around London, and she's made herself very available to us to help and to make sure the whole day has gone smoothly. But we've also had great support, really, pretty well from when we started, however long ago, 18 months ago now, from Charlotte Davidson at the Seven Stars, who designed our logo for us, who turned up at our rehearsal completely. You know, we didn't ask her to come. She just came along to see if we needed any help. She managed to get all the slides working. She managed to embed all the videos, all the things that I'm totally incapable and incompetent at doing. And really, I mean, for her to do that and to sort of help out was just fantastic. I was going to say thank you very much to Graham Blake, who's here from Blue Tui, but he hasn't actually done anything yet to put this on the website. So we're thanking him now in advance. You can have a sort of advance thank you, Graham, for doing what you're about to do with all of the material that we've collected today. And of course, we should thank all of the workstream leaders who've done a fantastic job, all the speakers today who've come along. And I think this has been a really pretty interesting and you know, pretty impressive performance by everybody. So thank you very much indeed to everybody, and thanks a lot for coming.